On January 1991, one of the days, first weekend days, Eric Molobi and myself began our new employment at Kagiso Trust offices, then based at the Dara House. Eric was the executive director designate, and I was coming in as a Transvaal Regional Director designate. As the executive director, Eric assumed the leadership of KT, and I became accountable to him via the National Program Director, the late Mr. Vincent Mukhale, one of Eric's confidant of the time. At that time, I had already met Eric through the activities of the United Democratic Front. And at KT, our association and interaction lasted for a period of 10 years. Eric's appointment as executive director and the appointment of other staff members coincided with the transition of KT from one character to another. The motto, or what the new generation has taught us that it is called a tagline, the motto of KT was liberation, peace, development, and was accompanied by a logo that depicted a dove in flight as a sign of peace. The unbanning of the erstwhile banned organizations, the ANC and others, can be seen as kickstarting the process of liberation. The process at the Conference for a New Democratic South Africa at CODESA signified the facilitation and attainment of peace buttressed by institutions such as the National Peace Accord. What was now left was to be achieved was the implementation and delivery of development programs in terms of the motto that the founding fathers of the KT had developed as liberation, peace, and development. So development of the country, therefore, was the main thing that was really facing us, and Eric came in to obviously spearhead that. Until this time, 1990 and before, KT had funded activities aimed at sustaining the struggle against apartheid and state repression. It funded paralegal institutions such as advice offices, civic and residents associations opposed to unfair rental increments under the slogan of Asina Mali. And it was also contribution to alleviation of unemployment and living conditions of the oppressed people in the rural areas and the Bantustans through financial sustenance by funding community creches, early childhood development centers, which invariably employed community members. The completion, as I said, of the motto of development was to be implemented, therefore, under Eric. Indeed, once he was in office and with the supporting staff, a number of new and innovative projects were developed under his tenure as executive director. The Johannesburg Housing Company, for instance, which provided low-cost housing in Johannesburg. The Mvula Trust, which provided water solutions to the country. The Institute for Local Government in Logov, which was to prepare new councillors for the new government. The Soul City series, and the transference of the KT bursary program to the government, which then set up the Tertiary Education Fund of South Africa from the foundation laid by the Kagiso Trust bursary program. So, and this is a precursor to the National Student Financial Support that we are seeing today. While we are funding, we continue to fund those organizations in the rural areas, like Soetfontein Rural Development and so on, the Printing College of South Africa, where we made sure that Black people were able to get into those colleges, which were mainly for whites. We built an incubation center in Kimberley and a community clinic in Khalishiwe. We developed a program to develop the capacity of community-based organizations, which we call the CBO support program, to be able to, so that CBO could be able to access funding and be accountable and more. It was during his leadership, that is Eric, that in 1992, the trustees resolved that KT should take advantage of the opening political and Black economic empowerment space, that KT should establish an investment company that would contribute to ensure the sustainability of KT beyond donor funding. Thus, under his leadership, the Kagiso Trust Investment was formed. His leadership style and acumen was demonstrated, reflected in various ways and traits. ethical leadership. The reason why KT has not attracted any media headlines about corruption or inappropriate behavior is because there's always been zero tolerance of corruption. And Eric used to say to us, he would like to go to bed and have a peaceful sleep because he knows that the type of staff that he had the necessary ethos and capabilities to be able to keep the trust out of problems. He had a lot of personal commitment to the organization to let it survive beyond donor funding. And there are various strategies that he developed, for instance, to try, that is because before even the evidence came from KTI, to try and survive and make KT to survive, particularly after 1994, when the major donor, the European Union, stopped funding KT. It was a difficult moment at that time, 94 going towards 95. But Eric had also a trust in his staff. He had immense trust and placed those people that he placed in authority and those he knew before as his comrades. And that's why he always believed that those people that he has put in place are the people who will make sure that there's no corruption and so on. Eric was very humble. And he was always willing to understand what his staff was saying. While officially was Mr. Eric Molobi in those moments of easiness, but in moments of easiness and relaxation, we called him Bra Eric or Bra Era. He was one of us. On Fridays, he used to hang around and buy drinks in a true spirit of comradeship with and other senior members, without having the mantle of being the executive director and our leader. He was one of us. Diplomacy, he was always diplomatic in many ways. And his diplomacy always used to put him in trouble because many people approached him about this project, for him maybe wanting to be funded and so on. But because he always had confidence in his staff, he'd brief us and say, look, I'm going to meet so-and-so about funding, and I would like you to tell me what is the problem and so on. And we'd go there and have a strategy of how to deal with this person. It didn't matter who that person was. But what was key at point is that we should not compromise the ethos of KT and so on. And also, once he was appointed as executive director, one of the first things that he led us to do was to develop the standard operating procedures of KT. For instance, how to appraise a project, how to determine whether we should go on and not, which things were not there before he came, because his appointment, as I said, came at that time, and part of it was to modernize KT and make it an organization that was being able to fund people according to certain procedures and so on. So that was one of his legacies as KT. Networking, he networked with a number of people in the development, the political, and corporate sector. In this would sometimes be beneficial to KT or open for KT for future engagements. Information and storytelling was one of his cornerstones. In those meetings, he would always share stories of his experience, what he saw when he met people. He met a lot of people in government. And one of the things that really touched me one day was when he went to meet Joe Slovo as the Minister of Housing. And he came very distraught that people were going there and calling the minister JS. And he was saying, people don't recognize that there's a new government that is coming in. And we need to respect those people and so on. So those are some of the things that he did. And I just like to, one of the stories that he told us also was when he went to see Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And I'm aware that Prince Zuzifa is here. And he said, when we arrived there in Ulundi, we didn't know what to do because, the chief was very antagonistic to KT. And the chief said to him, before you can start, when you have a wound, and the wound has a pus, you must first clean the pus so that you can go ahead. And I thought the chief was very pregnant at that point. And Eric came back and said, in spite of all the things, the meeting went very well because it was part of ensuring that the work of KT survived in those areas and so on. So in Eric's time, I would say that KT moved, as I say, from being purely an organization that sustained the struggle against apartheid and alleviated poverty that was caused by apartheid. And that's why, for instance, you find that the slogan, liberation, peace, and development, became very important. But during his time also, the organization grew and was able to withstand all the difficulties of reduced donor funding, because when the European Union reduced funding, we were only left primarily with the government of Japan that was funding us at that time. But it was a difficult time at that time. And at the same time, there was also KTI that had to be developed and so on. So we can say that over time, the foundation that he built moved the tagline or the motto from overcoming poverty to igniting human minds. So truly, under his leadership, KT moved beyond means that the founding members had hoped for. And we hope, therefore, that wherever he is, he's with the founding members, Dr. Beas Nodie, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Dr. Ebin Komo, Yunus Mohammed, Professor Hermel, Dr. Mes Coleman, and the colleagues he worked with close at KT, Vincent Mukhani and Ahmed Dengo. And we hope that as they reminisce and reflect about the organization, they are happy, pleased, and content that through their selfless contribution, KT has survived and is celebrating 40 years of existence today. This gathering, therefore, attests to the fact that Eric Molobi's legacy and personal contribution has not been overlooked, and it is in fact being celebrated here and now. As for KT, and in his honor, his passion and development in education, the organization had designed a program that has been running called the Eric Molobi Scholarship Program. This program funds particularly those students from disadvantaged areas, from the rural areas like Tafelkop, Shandima, and so on throughout the country. And that is a legacy that we have in KT. And we thank him particularly for his family, in particular, Mrs. Molobi, Osmatha, as some of us would call her, the children, Lele and Tisetso, and the children for having taken Eric, for us having taken Eric as one of us and utilize him in the growth and development of Kagiso Trust and Kagiso investments, and thereby stole a portion of his time for 16 years from 1991 to 2016. Thank you.